Hello, one Storm One here. Today, we'll be talking about storm system that's going to be ejecting out of rockets. That's going to cause a lot of issues across portions of the central and eastern U.S. It's going to bring a big winter storm over portions of Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, even for portions of Dakotas. This system will also bring a significant severe weather effect over some of the same areas that experienced severe weather not too long ago in the Arlington, Texas region. And another system could develop along that warfront that could bring a winter storm threat for portions of the northeastern U.S. And we'll also be talking about our long range and also an early look into Christmas as well. Before we get started this video, if you guys like weather related content, you can subscribe to my channel. We do stuff here all the time on this channel. Plus, we could have more updates on some of these topics as well. So definitely stay tuned for any more updates as well. So we're going to get started with the watch warning advisory display. Really, for the eastern U.S., it's generally quiet. Got its fog issues for portions of the Gulf Coast states, and even for parts of southern Wisconsin. We also got a little winter weather system and for portions of the Northeast. Got some winter weather advisories up there. In the western U.S., it's a different story, where we got more winter weather issues out there. Got a mix of winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories out there. But we also got this large area of blue, as you can see on this map. Those are winter storm watches. It includes parts of Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, the Dakotas, and even for a few counties in northwestern Minnesota. That's going to be ahead of a storm system that could bring in a lot of snow to some of those areas. So let's check out the Canadian model. And the Canadian model has been the most consistent model. It has been in stone with this really for the past few days. So that's the model we're going to check out today for the storm system. And you can see over the next couple of days, the western U.S. is going to be dealing with a mix of rain and snow. In the Sierra Mountains in California, you guys can see a lot of snow that could be measured in feet. That same storm system that'll bring in a lot of winter weather problems will be ejecting out of the plains. And you can see here by Tuesday morning and into the afternoon hours, got a 993 millibar low in south central Nebraska. That's bringing a lot of snow to parts of the central and over plains. But at the same time, in Arlington, Texas region, that's where we're going to be dealing with some severe weather, especially along and ahead of that dry line out there in the plains, but that cold front will catch up very quickly, and eventually we're going to get some more severe weather for the overnight hours on Tuesday for areas along the lower Mississippi River Valley, and that could go into Wednesday morning for parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, maybe even to parts of the Florida Panhandle too. And you can see here, eventually this storm system here becomes a little bit more of a cutoff low, still bringing in a decent amount of snow for parts of Wyoming, Montana, and the Dakotas. And this could also bring blizzard-like conditions. You will notice here on the back side of the low here, we got these isobars very close together. That's an indication of some strong winds that'll be out there, which once again could lead to some blizzard-like conditions. But as we get to late next week, along that cold front, another system could develop along that cold front. And really by Thursday afternoon, there's a chance for a wintry mix setup or a CAD cold air damming setup across parts of Virginia and even up into parts of Maryland and West Virginia. That's where we can see the potential for a mix of freezing rain and sleet. It's too early to say how much freezing rain and sleet there will be, but some models do hint on that potential out there as well. Then as we move on to Thursday night into early Friday morning, this system really gets going when it goes over the mid-Atlantic. It also brings a lot of snow for parts of Pennsylvania, New York, and even getting up to the portions in the New England states too, with the potential for blizzard-like conditions. You can see there on the northeast side of that low where those isobars are very close together. That's where we can see some stronger wind gusts at the surface. And finally, that system, well, at least it tries to get out of here by December the 18th or 19th, which is pretty far out by that point. But you can see here, this one really, one whole system as a whole or a trough could bring a lot of issues for basically from coast to coast. But let's go to get started with the severe weather side of things, as that's going to be a little bit more serious. So here's the storm predictor outlook here for the rest of tonight. Get a margin risk for parts of southeastern Texas into parts of Louisiana. That includes places like Houston and College Station. Pretty low tornado risk, but damage winds is going to be the main threat. Day two, which is tomorrow, got some of the same areas within that margin risk that also includes places like Baton Rouge. Then on day three, which is Monday, this is when severe weather will begin to start a little bit. Uh, it kind of starts off in the parts of Oklahoma and Texas. That includes places like Fort Worth, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, and even Wichita Falls, Texas. But whenever we get to day four, which is Tuesday, this is where things get much more serious. Got a 30% enhanced risk for northern Louisiana and southern Arkansas, with that slight risk that includes really the rest of Louisiana, most of Arkansas, eastern Texas, far southeastern Oklahoma, and a majority of Mississippi. It's pretty rare to see enhanced risk right on the 4 to 8 day outlook, but also this 30% enhanced risk has been around since all the way back to day 6. So this enhanced risk has been around for quite some time here, and it will not surprise me maybe when day 3 comes out, they probably will maintain that enhanced risk. But there's also that low chance that they may upgrade to moderate risk. But we'll see about that. And then on day 5, which is Wednesday, got a slight risk for severe weather for southeastern Louisiana, southeastern Mississippi, southwestern Alabama, and the far western part of the Florida Panhandle as well. So let's check out the NAM model. This is going back to Monday here. You can see if things are mostly dry here, but some showers and storms do begin to form along the dry line in the parts of Texas and Oklahoma. That's where we have the marginal risk in place. But as we get into Tuesday, that's when things get a little bit more interesting. Some of those showers and thunderstorms along that dry line slash cold front will begin to intensify as it gets to the Arlette Tex region and even getting closer to the Mississippi River Valley. And you can see there by Tuesday evening, now we really start to see those showers and thunderstorms go off along that cold front and even going into the overnight hours. But let's back this up a little bit. It kind of go back to almost about peak time heating on Tuesday and check out some of your severe weather ingredients. We'll start off with the Lova Jet, 850 millibar winds. It's not the greatest of the Arlette Tex region, but it's still strong enough to support severe weather. Your strongest Lova Jet will be found up in the Midwest, and the Lova Jet up there gets pretty strong, closing in on 80 knots, which is pretty impressive for a low level jet. If we were to check the trough as a whole at 500 millibars here, you can see here, this is a pretty massive trough here off to the northwest. We also got a lot of divergence out there as well, which can lead to quite a bit of lift out there. So that's another good thing if you want severe weather. But let's check out those dew points. 60 plus dew points is I would consider a pretty good environment here for thunderstorms and for severe weather. And you can see here, we got a pretty large area of 60 plus dew points. And some of those dew points could get as far north as northeastern Arkansas. We really have to watch the northern extent of the severe weather or of the warm sector, because that's where some of the strongest wind shear values will likely be, is in the far northern part of the warm sector. So we got to watch those areas up there to see how models trend over the next couple of days. But at the moment, it kind of keeps the severe weather potential really as far north as northeastern Arkansas, at least at this point. But it could change. But let's also talk about instability, which is another big ingredient for severe weather. You can see here surface-based instability. at least up in portions of Arkansas. It's not the best instability values you see, but it's still supportive for some severe weather. And you got instability values really ranging from 600 to almost 900 Cape. But some of those better instability values will likely be found in parts of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, where you got some values that could be up to as high as 1500, which would be supportive for severe weather. Let's check out the superset composite, which is the combination of instability and wind shear. And you can see here, values up to a 3. That's still supportive for some severe weather, but as you get into the evening hours when that wind shear does begin to ramp up, some of these values do begin to increase. So if we were to get a sounding, probably the triple point of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas, and see what this sounding does show. You can see here, not the best instability you will see. Uh, well, up to 1,000 joules per kilogram will still be supported for severe weather. But check out those serrated felicity values, SRH. Talk about values that are anywhere from about 300 to 500. Those are some pretty high numbers. The hodograph looks good. Got a nice large curve to the hodograph, which could be favorable for some large hook echoes on some supercells. Lap rates, especially middle of the lap rates, are elevated on the severe weather setup, which could help lead to uh, prevent messy convection. So I think things will be a little bit drier out there. And that's not really a good thing because if you do see drier conditions out there, it not only helps ramp up some of those instability values. You get more dry at time. If you get sunshine, you can get higher instability values. So that's not really a good thing. But this is also a pretty saturated sounding too. When that green line and red line get very close or they touch each other, that's an indication that there's a lot of moisture out there. That's actually going to be good for tornadoes too. So based off this sounding here, conditions could be favorable for some damage winds and the potential is there for tornadoes. Some of them could be strong. Hail will be a possibility in some of those supercells as well. It kind of depends on how much dry air is going to be in the upper levels because that is a pretty saturated sounding right there, which is not the best environment for hail. But there could still be that possibility for some large hail out there too. But really, the main concern on this severe weather setup, at least for right now, is going to be damage winds and tornadoes. But it could change. And hopefully it does, because this is a pretty decent environment for severe weather. And some of these areas just already got hit for severe weather not too long ago. Severe weather won't be the only concern in the warm sector, but also some gusty winds. This is the NAM model again, uh, with forecasted wind gusts really basically the middle of the night of Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning. Now, where severe weather will likely be occurring, winds, winds won't be too bad. Really about 20 to 30 miles per hour. That's not bad. However, if you go a little bit farther north to the northern part of the warm sector, winds are a little bit stronger. That's partially due to a much stronger low jet. And within that low jet, winds could be up to 80 knots, which is a pretty strong low jet. And below some of the strongest winds of the low jet, some of those winds could potentially get down to the surface. And that's where you get wind gusts like these that could show up, which the name model does suggest wind gusts could be up to 60 miles per hour, which I have doubts on that. If it were to be a little bit more believable, honestly, there will be a little bit more dry air to work with, which wind can move more freely, or air, in dry air than moist air, which you can see here by the sounding here. There's a lot of moisture out there. So I think those wind gusts will be a little bit overdone. But even with wind gusts being overdone, there's still the potential for wind gusts that could be up around 40 miles per hour, which would be a wind advisory criteria. And I think the best potential for that will probably up towards the Tennessee Valley and maybe even into parts of the Ohio Valley as well. So that's basically the warm sector cover. Let's talk about the cold sector, that potential for snow. And we're going to first off check out the Weather Prediction Center's probability. And this is for snow on day 3, which is basically Tuesday into Wednesday. And you can see here for probably for at least 2 inches of snow. There's some pretty good probabilities out there, about a 90 to 100% chance. So basically, you're going to get at least 2 inches of snow for northwestern Nebraska, and really for a good chunk of the Dakotas. Really, a good probability I would consider would be at least a 70%, or the brighter blues, the oranges, and the reds are some pretty good probabilities. How about at least 4 inches of snow? There's still some pretty good probabilities out there. You got up as high as a 90% probability in west central South Dakota. How about at least 8 inches of snow? Still have really good probabilities, up to about a 70% chance. How about at least a foot? You got probabilities up as high as a 40 to 50% chance. 18 inches of snow? This is where probabilities really go down quickly. Got about a 10 to 20% chance. I mean, heck, they even got a probability for at least 2 feet of snow, which more than likely won't happen. They got about as high as a 5% chance. Basically, not going to happen, pretty much. But let's check out a weather model. But I also should mention that this does not go for the entire event. That's not what I want to mention here. So some of these probabilities, especially on the higher totals, could be a little bit higher whenever it goes through the entire event. It only maxes out to day 3. But you can see here from a weather model standpoint, going about 3 days out, like the weather predictors forecast, it does suggest quite a bit of snow out there. It's even got a pocket of 19 inches of snow for parts of South Dakota, but I don't think we're going to get quite that high, as models do have a tendency to be a little bit overdone. But you can see here from this model here, shows a widespread swath of about 4 to 6 or 7 inches of snow, really for most of the Dakotas, going back towards parts of Montana, Wyoming, some of the higher elevations of Colorado, northwestern Nebraska, even going into parts of western Minnesota. But if we were to go through pretty much the entire event, so if we were to go into through Thursday, you see here those snowfall totals really, really ramp up. Now, where some areas that would show a 4 to 6 inches of snow, man, this ball is spinning out up around a foot. Now, then again, likely a little bit overdone here, but still taking it off to a more accurate number. It's still quite a bit of snow. It's also pretty widespread too. It's not like it's in a localized area. It's actually a pretty widespread event. The K-Mall suggests snowfall amounts can range maybe as low as 9 inches to as high as about a foot of snow across the Dakotas, northwestern Nebraska, a good chunk of Montana, Wyoming, northeastern Colorado, and even for a decent chunk of north central Minnesota. So really, overall, this is going to be a pretty big snowfall event for the upper Midwest and pretty much the entire northern plains. So, yeah, that's going to be a pretty big event. And that K model also showed that low developing along the front. But we're actually going to check out ensembles because it does get a little bit further out. So this is the European ensembles going through into Saturday, or 1 week away from now. You can see there a lot of snow showing off from the European ensembles. And keep in mind, this is a mean of 51 members. And this is a pretty strong mean for the European ensembles. And really across parts of Dakotas, it's got a mean as high as 20 inches. That's a very high mean. But if we were to go to the other side of the country, over parts of the Northeast, there's actually an area of some elevated snowfall totals, where the European ensembles say that the snowfall mean, when that low develops along that front, might be able to put down snowfall totals that could be as high as 10 or 11 inches, which would be a pretty good snowstorm for parts of Pennsylvania and New York. This is also an indication that there is a good agreement with the European ensembles. That's what it also tells us. If you got high numbers on a snowfall mean, that's basically an indication that there is a good agreement with the European ensembles that there is a winter storm threat for parts of Pennsylvania and New York, and even including parts of the New England states. Now, of course, there's still some time for changes. It could downtrend or it could uptrend. We'll have to give some models a little bit more time. And oh yeah, let's check out the GFS ensembles, and it basically shows a pretty similar thing, but a little bit more localized out there. But really, generally, the European and the GFS ensembles both do agree that there could be a winter storm, possibly later next week for parts of the Northeast. That's going to be something else to really keep an eye on as well. All right, let's talk about the next several days up to around Christmas. So we're going to check out temperature anomalies. So right now, temperatures are above normal for a good chunk of the U.S. Temperatures are below normal in the Northeast. You can see here where that storm system really gets its act together as it ejects out into the plains. This is also going to be that same system that's going to be basically a pattern changer. It's going to bring in a lot of cold air, which you can see on the backside of that system there across the western U.S. We got some places where temperatures are well below normal, at least 20 degrees below normal. Meanwhile, in the warm sector of the system, you got temperature anomalies that are about 15 to 20 degrees above normal. I mean, even around the Dallas and Fort Worth area, it's about 25 degrees above normal. So definitely some well above normal anomalies. But watch what happens when that system continues to move off to the east. Now we got this big area of well below normal temperatures across parts of the Rockies, back into the northwest where you got temperature anomalies. We're anywhere from about 10 to almost 30 degrees below normal. That is some serious cold air up there. Meanwhile, in the northeast, temperatures are slightly above normal, but look across the deep south here. Yeah, widespread below normal temperatures that's anywhere from about 5 to 10 degrees below normal by next weekend. And it kind of stays that way. Really, the only bigger difference as we head into the week of December the 19th is that all this really cold air in, in the northwest begins to expand eastward into the northern plains. And check out the anomalies. This is about 10 days out on the European ensembles, and it is spinning out temperatures that are closer to 40 degrees below normal. That is a ridiculous mean from the European ensembles. You rarely see that 10 days out. How about we go out at least 10 days out? This is the 21st of December. Again, temperatures about 30 to closer to 40 degrees below normal across parts of Montana and the Dakotas. That is some serious cold air. And you can see the trend with it that it slowly expands farther to the southeast. And check this out. This is Christmas Eve from the European ensembles. Now, there is still some time for changes, but still, in the northern plains, there's a decent agreement from the European ensembles for below normal temperatures, and that means 20 to 25 degrees below normal. And this is nearing 15 days out, and a mean like this is pretty impressive for the European ensembles. Meanwhile, for the rest of the U.S., a good chunk of the eastern U.S. was slightly below normal temperatures, which indicates at least for a colder pattern. Meanwhile, in the western U.S., it's kind of average, but it's also an indication there is some uncertainty in the western U.S. It's got some places slightly above normal and other places slightly below normal. That's basically an indication of some uncertainty out there. And there you go, Christmas morning from the European ensembles. Still got a pretty strong mean in the northern plains to the upper Midwest. If that agreement does continue, I think that some of these temperatures here, anomalies, are just going to continue. I don't know a right word for it, but I think these temperature anomalies are going to grow. What I mean by growing is that those temperature anomalies are going to continue to go down, which is an indication that temperatures could get colder on the anomalies for the European anomalies, if that makes um, any sense. Let's check out the GFS ensembles. So this is right now pretty similar to the uh, European ensembles. And when that system really tracks through a good chunk of the country, that brings in below normal temperatures for a good chunk of the country. This is by Sunday, December the 18th. Got a lot of cold air in the parts of the northwest, even spilling into parts of the northern plains. Got slightly below normal temperatures across the south and southeast, the northeast, and the Great Lakes. Slightly above normal for temperatures, about 5 degrees above normal. But kind of similar to the European ensembles. Not nearly as strong, but it still got some pretty impressive below normal anomalies over parts of Montana and the Dakotas. For an agreement like this, at least 10 days out, that's very rare to see. And really, the part of the reason why we're going to see a lot of cold air is partially due to all the blocking we're going to have to our north. There, there's there could be a negative NAO, there could be ridging over Alaska, and there can also be a negative AO, which basically that means that there's going to be blocking basically everywhere to our north. Where's all that cold air going to come? It's going to come down here to the United States, and that's really what the ensembles really suggest here. This is Christmas Eve here from the GFS ensembles, and it's a little bit different from the European ensembles. Shows a pretty big dip of below normal temperatures really across the plains out there. There's also the possibility for some southeast ridging that this model does suggest at the same time that at least covers really all of Florida. And here's Christmas, and still uh, an indication for a below normal temperatures across parts of the Northwest, extending the Northern Plains to Midwest, even for the Central Plains. It even indicates a little southeast ridge here that at least covers Florida, even for parts of Georgia as well. So that'd be another thing to really watch for. But if we were to go to the European ensembles at around the same time, it does not show that southeast ridge. So there's a little bit of uncertainty when it comes to the southeast ridge. But also keep in mind, this is very far out and things could easily change here. But the main reason why I'm showing these ensembles this far out is to really show you how unusual the agreement is between these two models. Typically in this range here, it could be all over the place. You may just see a lot of white on the map, which is an indication for average temperature anomalies, or in other words, a lot of uncertainty. It's pretty wild to see a strong agreement between the European ensembles and the GFS ensembles, but still keep in mind that things could still change in his range here, despite of his agreement here. But it's definitely pretty impressive to see, and it also leads to above normal confidence that we're going to see, or could potentially see, an Arctic outbreak somewhere in the United States, and it's becoming more likely for parts of the Northern Plains, Upper Midwest, and even back into parts of the Northwest as well, especially during the Christmas weekend. Let's also have another way to look at GFS anomalies. This is precipitation anomalies, and this is a 7-day mean. So this is at the end of the run of the GFS anomalies. This goes between December the 19th through the 26th. So that's basically around Christmas time. And there are some signals out there for drier normal conditions in the northwestern U.S. That's where you got some of those yellows that show up. So there is an agreement for some below normal anomalies out there. Not the best news for areas of northwest if you want to like Christmas. But really, especially in those higher elevations, there's likely to be snow on the ground by that point. So I'm sure you guys probably won't need any more snow up there. However, something that's really catching my attention is what's going on across parts of the South. There are pockets of some above normal precipitation anomalies, which is an indication that there is an agreement there might be one or more storm systems that can move through some of these areas here across the south. Almost kind of like an El Nino type of pattern, which is very interesting here. But keep in mind, back on the GFS Sawmills, it's got a lot of cold air across parts of the plains, the Midwest, even back into parts of the Northwest. So there's a lot of cold air going on up here. So if you were to split this precipitation here, kind of in half here, north of that red line, might need to watch for snowfall potential at around sometime in this 7-day time frame. That's kind of a similar situation back to the parts of the southwestern U.S. But don't get too excited. Keep in mind, we're still pretty far out from Christmas, so things can still change. But it's still pretty interesting to see an agreement like this, which does lead to some above normal confidence. Here's what the CPC kind of thinks about this. It's kind of hard to see. Here we go. But this is their experimental map of risk of heavy snow. But if I'm going to be honest with you guys, really for some of the previous forecasts for the CPC when it comes to risk of heavy snow, most of the time it does not verify. So I'll take this map as a grain of salt. But you can kind of see what I'm talking about, like I was saying on the GFS ensembles, and they do kind of agree with that. We got two areas. We got one area across parts of the southwestern U.S. where we do have that slight risk area in that purple shade, even a pink shade. We actually got a moderate risk out there. I think that's the first time I actually see a moderate risk for heavy snow. And oh yeah, by the way, this is valid through the 17th through the 24th to the 23rd. So this does not go through Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. I want to point that out real quick. But also, there's a secondary area that extends from parts of Oklahoma and Texas, then moves through parts of Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, even the portions of Kentucky, which is very interesting to see. But once again, I'll take this map really as a grain of salt because really most of their forecasts, and I understand this is experimental, but still, really most of their forecasts really hasn't panned out or verified. But we'll see how this goes here. But then again, don't get too excited here if you are in these areas here because things can still change. But it is also very interesting to see that we have a pretty unusual agreement for right around Christmas time, and I think things could get a little bit more interesting. We could probably have more updates on this as we get closer to Christmas. But anyways, guys, that's all for guys today. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this video. Guys, like this video, hit that like button if you really like my channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you guys have questions about this, put a comment section down below. I answer you guys questions. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and have a good day.